You have to actively be involved in your own holistic well-being, and sitting and just discussing how bad your pain is amongst a group of people who are also just ruminating about their pain. It kind of reinforces that victim complex of you're a passenger. It's like, no, you're not a passenger. You are the boat. You're not just the captain. You are the boat.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Healthy Business Lab podcast, where we interview awesome allied health business owners, sharing their learnings, their experiences, and their insights for fellow allied health businesses and professionals in growing their practices and just being all-round learning machines. So today I'm super excited to have on the call today Nicola Michell from City Physio here in Sydney, local to me. Nicola, welcome to this episode.
Hi, thanks for having me. So I'm Nicola. I took over City Physio, which is in Martin Place, in 2017. And since then, we have tripled it in size. And so now it has a team of 12 at the moment.
Up to 12. That's amazing growth even. So we always have a bit of pre-chat with our guests and learn a little bit about them. And I think when we were speaking then, it's about 9. It was a few months ago that we spoke. So continuing to grow.
Yeah, we have. It's become its own little beast.
Love it. But a nice beast from everything, the discussions that we've had. I'd love to unpack that growth. It was 2007 you took over. It was an interesting process that you shared with me, and then also that living in the centre of Sydney during the COVID times, a lot of learnings, a lot of challenges that you face. Again, we always talk about experiments here at the Healthy Business Lab, and I'd love to hear some of your experience and those learnings of that process of how and where you started.
Absolutely. So I was working at City Physio for 2.5 years. And I think about at the 2-year mark, I sort of had that conversation. Everyone goes through this sort of conversation at some point in time where you go, if this was my business, I would not do it like that. I'd do it like this. And I sort of just started playing in the background. Oh, I would definitely do it this way or this way. And then within a few weeks, I had actually built a business model. I had worked out roughly how much business I could get through the business doing it my way versus the way it was being done. And I approached my boss, who was actually finishing off his medical degree, to take over the clinic. It didn't go as smoothly as I like to make it seem like this, but we'll skip over that little part. And I took over the clinic in, I think it was about July 2017. And at that point in time, it was myself and a receptionist. And I think I had another physio there for about a month or two, but she was finishing up anyway. I sort of had a bit of a really rocky start into the sort of the vertical, where something pear-shaped went with the receptionist, who perceived some management as bullying, and we had a fair work intervention, and she sort of sent herself off. So then for a little while, it was just me. I did about 6 months just myself before I hired an admin. I thought I was probably going to die. And then I hired my first physio by the end of that first year. I had an incredibly steep learning curve. I was dealing with finances. Oh my God, if I can't work, I can't keep the doors open, I can't pay my admin. If I have one sick day, I won't make rent. And so I very, very quickly learnt that I am not scalable. And so I hired my first physio, Matt, who still works here today. Love Matt. And he and I sort of built the practice up through 2018. By 2018, we had 2 more physios. So then there was sort of 3 or 4 of us, depending on the day, and admin. And then by early mid-2019, I had paid down all debt completely. So within 2 years, I proved that my business model was an actual model, not just a theory.
And I love that. I'd love to delve into that just a little bit more of the idea from idea to conception to building a framework. And then those first 2 years where, again, certain paths were detours taken, challenges faced, things to work through, being that new business owner. What were your sort of biggest learnings during that sort of period?
I think that the biggest learning for me was that people are key. You have to invest in your team. And that's sort of something that continues through to now. Without the amazing team that we sort of built through the different seasons that City Physio were sort of going through, we would not have made it. You spend more time at work than you do at home sometimes. So you want to make sure that at least you've got a symbiotic relationship with your team and everyone's on the same page. And at the beginning, when my admin sort of went pear-shaped, it was very, very obvious that we were not on the same team and that her values weren't sort of aligned with where I wanted to take the business, just little things like that. And just having that alignment, not easy. but easier.
Yeah, 100%. And love that. The word alignment is just so key and crucial as we're sort of growing in that whole and getting on the same boat, so to speak. So there's no point having everybody in different spots. And so then I guess that sort of next phase, then the evolution and say your business model and your plan of going through, hey, you get over that point where you've got a financially sustainable, you've paid off basically the purchase of a business in 2 years, which is impressive in itself. How did that next sort of step into the next phase go for you?
2019, my goal was to make myself redundant. The only thing that I wanted to actually be able to do in the business myself was have to run payroll, because that takes me 10 minutes and that's like $400 to outsource. So if I only touched one thing, I wanted it to be only payroll and everything run. And I tested that theory by going on holidays, and it mostly ran itself. There are a few little glitches and I was like, nailed it. We've actually got something going here. By that point in time, I knew my numbers. I had a separate savings account for tax and superannuation. I had payroll down to a fine art. I knew exactly how many patients were coming in and we could forecast cash flow. And that took us right to the end of 2019.
Ooh,
and you can see where I'm going with this.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll hold it there because this is a big turning point for everybody in their business. Yeah. Many great insights and learning. But what, again, I love this idea of sort of see that holiday that you took of kind of an experiment. And one of the books over my shoulder is a book by Mike McCallowich called Clockwork. 100% the idea of systemizing your business, getting that process. You go on a 4-week holiday, see how the business goes. And you obviously need systems in place to be able to do that and to be able to go. And then it is exactly what you just sort of talked about there, of a few little things, a few learnings, but no doubt you then created systems around that on your return. So how long did you go for, out of curiosity?
I did 4 weeks in Italy.
Nice.
It was exactly as the book described, but it mostly worked.
Yeah, cool. Brilliant.
Mostly.
And again, mostly, but I'm guessing those things that weren't the fully, which no business is always fully. There's no such thing as perfect. Totally believe in that. What did you do on your return from and working through those?
The only things that sort of didn't work were like sort of left field people issues, which some of my team didn't feel that they had the authority to actually act on my behalf. I don't agree with that. I think I would have trusted them implicitly, but they didn't feel that it was their place to act. So those things were managed okay with the time zone difference. So it was all fine. And sort of on the return from that holiday, there was a few sort of things we had to work out, some things that weren't done, that people are waiting for me. So there was obviously a few glitches that hadn't been accounted for, but I don't think you can know what they are until you leave.
100%. One of those processes, actually going through that process, is spot on. The other one, I think, touching upon there, which probably set you up for what we'll share in a moment from a chronological order of things, was you can tell that you're very early on, you're across your numbers. At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
Obviously, we love our numbers here. And so I know when we've had our chat previously, you're super clear on, hey, where you sit, putting buckets of money aside for certain things, but then even just knowing the numbers as to what you need to hit the goals and the ties in with your model, no doubt.
It's really nice to hear that you think I'm really across my numbers, because I will proudly say that I got 51% in my finance module in my commerce degree. So my big thing with numbers is if I can't see it, they don't exist. So I have to pay myself as an employee, not via a trust. I can't see it. I'm not tangible enough. So when someone is owed superannuation, I put it in the account named superannuation. When I've got tax, I put it in the tax bucket. The savings, I put it in the savings bucket, because that way I can see the numbers. During my commerce degree, which I've got under my belt as well, I really struggled with these hypotheticals because I couldn't see where the money was coming from. And so for me, it's got to be there.
Visible, tangible, 100%. Yeah. And it's this idea that we talk about, even though got the accounting background and all the rest of it, 100%. That idea of the theory and the practice, 100% are totally different. And what you've done there is very much you've given your money a purpose, and then you've actually made it real. It's the cash that's moved over there rather than financial reports. They can be confusing. They can be ambiguous. You've got all these numbers. And the reality is you kind of need to know 3 different reports to truly know the fine and tuned details, which accountants spent years and years mastering. Yep. Business owners don't have that time. They're running businesses. It's like, let's make this tangible. So again, you've found a way that works for you, leverages you the natural way that you think, which is brilliant.
Yep. So I spent a lot of time in those books, and I just did little things like every month I would look at a different metric. And then the next month I'd look at the next metric and go, how does that link with the previous one, and sort of work my way through.
Love that. Again, taking your time, biting off little bits and pieces as you go. What's the one thing? What's the next one big thing? No doubt there's like, oh, that has the biggest impact of, well, once I know and understand that, hey, how does that interrelate to the next piece of the puzzle?
Absolutely. And that allows me to build what we called our dreamboat, which was our savings accounts. Yeah. At about early mid 2019, I decided that we were hamstrung by the size of our premises and we needed to save for a fit out in the Sydney CBD. So at that point in time, I quoted out a fit out of a bigger premises to be about 25 or 35% of what it actually cost 5 years later. So our dreamboat very, very quickly in reality, 5 years later, was a canoe, a life raft.
Just that smaller one there.
So we just started chipping away with the savings.
Yeah. But again, having numbers out there, putting a goal out there and saying, well, here's what it is, and then watch the practical things happen. That's all like part and parcel of, again, whether it's the people, whether it's the finances, there's always things that are ebbs and flows in that river of the boat that goes along. So I guess we've touched on that period, and again, the financial side of things leading into 2020 and that sort of period, your learnings, your evolution and your changes around the time of COVID.
Basically, my motto has always been, I've got two mottos. One, it's always got to be fair. Two, fail fast. So I can tell you intimately what day and what hour COVID started. It was a Wednesday in March. And on that Wednesday, what's the worst that could happen? And I think I cried for like 12 hours. I went, oh my God, if I can't pay my team, they can't pay their mortgage. If they can't pay their mortgage, then they have to, this is not viable. What are we going to do? And from the Wednesday, when there was an inkling that this was going to go down, people started flooding out of the CBD. By Friday, I had a bank loan secured because I still had cash flow. My motto was fail fast, so I locked in a loan. I had forecast out for the next 12 months on how many patients a week and our savings, our dreamboat, which became our COVID life raft. How many patients a week exactly? How many needles? How much sorbeline? How many towels could we use or not use or cut back on to extend that dead date in that spreadsheet? So I still have the spreadsheet. It sits on my desktop of my computer. But every time we saw a patient, every pump of sorbeline, every hand sanitizer, every dry needle was accounted for in this model. And every time we added in, we saw a patient, the date shifted on what day we would no longer be solvent. What day could we no longer pay out the annual leave? What was the day we fell over? I paid myself $0 for about, I think it was 12 or 16 weeks. I can't recall. My husband and I sat down and forecasted all that. I cut my team's salaries back by a small increment, and that pushed us out even further. So I tried all these little levers to see what we could do with the metrics that I knew.
I love that. And I love that idea of, because you knew your numbers and I've now got a date, it's like, what are the levers? And it's the experiments of this. And it's like the one client, well, that gets us a bit further down the road. Or if we drop wages by X, Y, Z little bits, what does that do to that number? And at the end of the day, that gives you, I presume, gave you visibility to go, hey, we still need to experiment. We still need to tweak. Or actually, that's going to work. And then as that starts to play out, it just gives you more confidence at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And the team thrived off those numbers because they knew that they had a job. And the most common thing in the CBD was for people to cut their marketing spend and cut their physios, stand everyone down. If you don't market in the CBD, you're not visible. Most physio practices, like we were, on level 10 of an office tower. So there's no foot traffic. And then if you cut your physios, you can't get busy. You've got no one there. And then they get other jobs. So the two things I maintained was I maintained marketing spend, but we reduced the amount because no one else was competing with us. We had a monopoly, and I kept the whole team on the entire time.
I love that. And again, being able to show how you do that, but it's thinking ahead of the curve, which you go full circle back as to you've already had that thinking process around what's worst case scenario. And so your war plan, so to speak, they're ready to go so that while everybody else is, their shoulders are up here and they're stressy and they're not making the best decisions they've made, you've already done some of that thinking. You've probably stressed yourself out a little bit more, not as much as what people are, but you've done that a little bit earlier than anybody else, which is...
Yeah, it was a running joke that I would freak out about 2 days before anything was announced. I mandated masks in the clinic. 2 days later, Gladys Berejiklian mandated masks for New South Wales Health, and that's sort of the whole way through.
Yeah, love that. And it's like, we love sort of prophesizing what's going to happen in the future. You sort of a mini profit there, working through your business from having those. And Yeah, it's great. Also, the delivery side of things, I guess, through COVID and your wider business model, if we step through, I know when we first spoke, your model there that you've created for your clientele being CBD based, very specific type of clientele is kind of like your niche. I'd love for you to share a bit around that and the experiments that you work with and where you've landed in the model that is now working and thriving for you.
So because we're based in the heart of the Sydney CBD, our clients are very switched on, whether they're academically sort of leveled up or they're just working in high sort of fast-paced industries. Our patients are switched on, they're on time, but they want the jargon, they want information. We run a really tight ship in terms of don't on late, always on time for our appointments. That's non-negotiable. And we really focus heavily on education. My big thing in the clinic is if the patient knows, if they understand comprehensively why or why not they should do something, then you've built that trust implicitly for the journey of their injury. If I'm saying to someone, look, I really don't think you should run, I need to explain to them in depth why that decision will impact them. And then ultimately they're the adult, they can call. But if I've empowered somebody with enough information to know why or why not they should or should not do something, then they're going to have more trust in the process. So within our clinic, we have at the moment 5 physios. I'm a titled pain physio. My colleague Matt is a titled sports and exercise, and then 3 sort of generalist physios. Within that sort of model, we have a cross-referral system. So I do chronic, complex, and orofacial pain. I have a specialty in orofacial. Matt does all of the sort of the sports things. And so we have a sort of network within our team that if someone is not quite the right fit, we'll recommend a cross and sort of recommend them to the most appropriate physio. And patients love it. They go, oh my God, that's amazing. I don't need to see Nicola. I'm like, no, you're not chronic. You're not complex. You're not dark and swirly. We don't need to dig you out. You're fine. You're doing well. Stay with Dan. Stay with Elizabeth. Stay with Claudia. Whatever is needed. And because our patients sort of really thrive off information gathering, the education part, and then explaining why we should send them across to a different physio, it just sort of ties up.
Yeah, I love that. Well, the educating clients piece is what really stuck out at me is being somebody who loves the idea of that, and different practitioners who have used the ones that have explained certain things like, my brain can now tell my body what it needs to do in some ways. And so how long did it sort of take to really bed that in from when you started, and that idea of that model and the evolution of fine-tuning that sort of process as the team grew as well, having the ability to do the cross-referral of the right people, being able to serve the right clientele depending upon the client's requirements?
I don't think it was ever a day. I think it's continual. I think that especially because the influence of things like social media are so loud these days, it's really, really easy to be swayed by someone's opinion on the internet. Oh, the anterior pelvic tilt is the problem. And being like, look, it's not that cut and dry. Nothing is your human body, not a robot. It's a continual discussion with the team. And every now and again, we have to sort of reset and kind of rejiggle things back again. But it's more of an intrinsic feeling rather than an actual thing. So my big thing is comes from here, not from here. And kind of having to not course correct, but to remind the team that, okay, that's fine. You don't know everything. You're not supposed to know everything, but lean on the team you've got. The best examples of that are when things go wrong. If a patient's not progressing well, or if a patient is aggro, not because of what we've done, but because of what they're brought into the clinic. I always have to say to the team, you are not alone. You can say, you know what? I don't think I'm the right fit for you. I'm going to send you to Nicola because I won't tolerate that. And personality wise, sometimes it can be a better match.
Yeah, awesome. I love how you can, and a lot of this is driven off what I'm hearing and what I'm feeling is that whole communication piece and being able to have those open conversations across practitioners and from the system and the structure that you've set up around that, no doubt. And no doubt the internal team training that you're doing as well. Is that a fair comment?
Absolutely. We actually split our internal training between soft skills and clinical skills. So there are different things we're working on, particularly because I work with a lot of chronic and complex pain. That's the way you describe something. Your hands, your face, the tone, the intonation is really important if you're saying, I think you have a big coping skill issue or deficit in a psychological skill. That can make someone feel like they're crazy. So explaining it in a way that biopsychosocial pain or approach to pain doesn't mean I think you're crazy. It's a nuance.
And going there, we love to share on this podcast as well, sort of tips and insights for business owners. We don't often look after ourselves sometimes as good as we could, and we need to be looking after ourselves to be able to look at our businesses. And as you were talking about a lot of the C-suite executives that you see and the like, and some of the characteristics of those people, I was like, yeah, that's very similar to a lot of business owners out there. 100% very similar ideas. So I guess some of the insights of some of the work that you do with your clientele, I'd love for you to share a bit further into the insights and even that idea of pain. I know myself, it's something that I'm going through at the moment. I'm doing the brain thing with the cell memory of pain and stuff like that. If you've got a little insights and tips for people to think about so that they can have their body operating as, optimal as possible so that they can do the awesome things in their business that they need to.
So I'm probably the worst person to ask about this because sometimes I feel like burnout was a long time ago. So I go in and out of sort of self-preservation because I kind of love it. I just kind of want to keep running, and then I will catch myself fall over and go to something different. But for me, it's a very roller coaster approach. My big thing I always tell patients is that your body doesn't know where stress comes from. It doesn't know if it is the high intensity barriers boot camp class you did this morning, or if it was a tragedy in the family or a workplace situation. Stress itself is chemical, it's memory, it's psychological. And whether you are running as a good stress, it's still stress on the body. So a lot of the times we have to tell patients, okay, you're adding more things to your plate. What are you taking off? Your plate's not getting bigger. So you realized you're stressed and now you've added meditation, and then you realize you're a bit stiff. So you're doing yoga as well, and you're now exercising 14 times a week. What are we taking off? And the sort of the absence of something sometimes is better than adding more pieces.
So good. And I'm just letting that sit for people and also for myself. And that idea of even, I was writing down there, the body doesn't know where stress comes from. Even that simple concept of that, and thinking of plates analogies. We use plates analogies for a financial version there of the separate buckets for your bank accounts, but it is sort of like plate can't get bigger. And in life, plates have got bigger over historical components, and they can go to a certain level in some ways, but there still are limits to that. And taking that idea as a business owner of, hey, we usually got a couple of plates up in the air, but those plates aren't getting any bigger, and how do we actually make sure that we don't overload every plate that we've actually got?
Absolutely. And if people are still insistent on wanting to add a piece, and I typically say water, just add water. It works for kids, it works for adults too. So whether you can stick your head underwater in the ocean, whether you can go and float, can you swim some laps? It's got this calmative effect that's sort of well documented in the literature. I often describe it as the exercise version of a weighted blanket. It just kind of brings things down a notch. And I've had a few patients who have gone, we just need to stick your head underwater just for a second. And they've sent me a picture from the beach and gone, I hate that you're right. I hate it.
So good. So simple, but so good. It's just add water. It's something that people are going to think of, just add water. It can be go and take a break and have a drink of water. Or, like you say, run your hands or your face or whatever underwater. That's cool. My brain's processing that. And it's the exercise version of your weighted blanket. Again, there's some nice weighted blankets out there for the kiddies out there in the lounge room, and know the power of those as well. That's great. Well, what I'd love to share to sort of round off the conversation, time has flown. I'd love to sort of hear of a case study examples of stressed out client coming to you and where you've been able to take them from this whole process that you got in the model and your 30-minute sessions, educating people, and the sort of transformations that you've been able to achieve. Have you got an example there for me that sticks in your mind?
Orofacial pain is one of the most chronic and debilitating areas of pain in the body. So we're talking chronic TMJ, tooth grinding, the trigeminal neuralgias, all the really nasty things, as well as sort of headaches and migraine types. One particular patient I was seeing a couple of years ago, and we did a lot of this work on the memory of pain and how we start to have this reaction to what we think is a snake, but actually it's a stick. And so making sure you look and go, is it a snake? Is it a snake? Because your body can do this thing where it thinks it knows what it's doing, so it reacts for you. It's supposed to be protective, but actually it's not a snake. It was a stick. It's the same theory behind Pavlov's dog, and that happens with pain. And she recently messaged me a link to a national group, a TMJ support group that was meeting with ANZA-OP, which is the Australian New Zealand Orofacial Pain Group, which I'm a member of, looking at as a discussion to create a discussion between this TMJ group and ANZA-OP. Now, ANZA-OP are traditionally very clinical. They're very high-level discussions with maxillofacial surgeons, tests, physios, that sort of group. And the TMG pain groups are typically very victim-centered. And she said to me, I saw this, thought you might find it interesting. I'm not going. And I said, why aren't you going? And she goes, because I don't want to just sit and talk about pain. And I was like, that's the win. That's the win right there. You have to actively be involved in your own holistic well-being, and sitting and just discussing how bad your pain is amongst a group of people who are also just ruminating about their pain. It kind of reinforces that victim complex of you're a passenger. It's like, no, you're not a passenger. You are the boat. You're not just the captain. You are the boat. And I was very impressed that she'd finally sort of, in her own journey with managing her own chronic injury, realized that that was not helpful to her.
And what is brilliant about that is that I can see why that one's resonated for you when I've asked the example, because it ties back to that education piece.
Absolutely.
It's the notion of, hey, you've worked with this client over a period of time, and that's enabled this person to be able to self-reflect, self-identify, which is, if we've taught somebody to fish, it's like that ripple effect, the transformation that can happen from that. And no doubt that will filter down that she's talking to others out there in her community, in her space around that, that's going to have pretty amazing impact.
Yeah, it's quite good to have a win that is forward-looking in chronic pain, because sometimes they're sort of quite maintenance-y type physio appointments, and a lot of them don't like being challenged on sort of beliefs and behaviours and things like that can actually be detrimental. So when you kind of get that classical conditioning sort of full circle where someone goes, no, I recognise that this would be bad for me, it's like,
brilliant. And even that little tip of taking things off your plate, I was like, I don't need that on my plate. I can take that away, and that frees up space. That's great. So many amazing insights. I've got a massive page full that I've been trying to cram on one page here of insights and learnings and great little takeaways as well. Thank you very much, Nicola. That's been so amazing that I'm sure other allied health business owners out there are going to get so many ideas, insights that you've shared. If people want to connect with you, learn more about your practice or what you're up to and the like, where's the best place for people to find you and connect?
probably anywhere. LinkedIn, email, social media, we're responsive on all of them. So whatever works.
Whatever works for other people. We'll obviously have the show links in here to all those places, the socials, the website and the like. So feel free to connect with Nicola. And if you're in Sydney, go check out the physio. I know when I'm next in the city, I'm not always in there. I'll have to make sure I make a bit of an effort to go check it out.
Yes.
Thank you very much for your time today. It's been brilliant. And as always, for our listeners out there, make sure you like, subscribe, and keep on following us to get these amazing insights that we're sharing on the Healthy Business Lab podcast. So over and out from us. Thank you very much, Nicola.
Thanks, Craig.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Business Lab podcast. Make sure you subscribe to keep up to date with all the latest episodes.